about getting ahead on the board, playing very proactive control game, which is very good strategy traditionally again in a metagame full of creature decks. Instead of trying to lean really heavily on, say, 4 copies of Supreme Vert, he has removal all along the curve. And it also has 2 copies of Gilded Lotus, which can give him a big mana edge.
Ooh, a little ramp up.
Yep.
I kind of like that, actually. You know, he's been a lot of things he talked about in his article were, one of the problems with the Grixis deck is it doesn't have very good life gain. That's a bit of an issue where, a lot of people go towards green for Thragtusk, or Revelation obviously provides life gain for you. War Leader's Helix provides a life gain. Grixis doesn't really have a great option to that. You can play, Vampire Nighthawk and some other, pretty mediocre options. It doesn't really have a sweeper. You have to really alter your deck to be able to play a card like Mutilate. Mizzium Mortars with Overload is kind of a sweeper. I mean, that's 6 mana.
Yeah, and I'll tell you from our proto testing, not that any of us played Izzet or anything along those lines, but the combination of Izzet Staticaster and Ral Zarek against creature decks is so powerful.
That's like a very real thing.
Yeah, I mean, each of those cards individually are quite good against creature decks, and together it's just lights out. I mean,
so Staticaster is a card that, it kind of, that's a card that kind of ebbs and flows, which makes sense, when there's a deck like Naya Blitz or, a Junk Aristocrats type deck, which Kyle Blankenship is playing. Staticaster is pretty much the last card you want to play against. As you take a look at Blankenship's deck, he's got 4 Blood Artists, he's got Cartel Aristocrat, Doom Traveler, Skristak, High Priest. He's got 2 Strangleroot guys, 2 Varls, 4 Royce of Resurgence, 1 Bloodthrone Vampire as well. You look at some of his spells, he has 3 Grizzly Salvage, 3 Lingering Souls, 3 Tragic Slips, and then a card that doesn't see a ton of play, but you're going to find in this deck list, and it's kind of the backbone of what Blankenship's trying to do here, is 3 copies of Immortal Servitude. He's got a ton of 2s in his deck to be able to bring back. So I think that card can actually play a pretty big role in this matchup, because it doesn't look like Chapin's going to have a lot of problems killing a lot of creatures, but can he kill the second wave of them is a really big question.
Immortal Servitude seems excellent in this matchup.
So a little bit more about Kyle Blankenship for you guys from Bradenton, Florida. Only top finish that he really has is 8th place at the SCG in Orlando from a couple months ago. And just a little fun fact, he is incredibly happy to be on camera and happy to be 6-0, and hard not to be.
Yep, so you see Chapin leave off here with a Watery Grave and a Blood Crypt. Kyle will likely have one of his 2 drops this turn. It is Skurzad High Priest.
So he kind of wants to get that online, trying to pump a demon out here. We've seen the interaction with this card before, normally followed up by a Doom Traveler and a Cartel Aristocrat to kind of get the ball rolling, but Chapin is going to get that out of here right now. He's going to cast a Devil's Play, a card that we'll bring up on the camera for you, a Singleton, and this Fireball that hasn't seen play for a little while, actually.
Yeah, a lot of Chapin's deck here is he has 3 copies of Divination. These are a lot of fringe players in control decks.
Divination?
But if there's anyone I would trust to have the sort of the right read on what the suite of random control cards they should be playing is, it's definitely Patrick.
All right, so a follow-up High Priest here for Blankenship, and we're going to pass the turn back. Chapin does draw another Water Grave, it looks like here. So, yeah, I mean, there's some interesting cards and some interesting numbers in Pat's deck. You can definitely tell that he's, worked on this quite a bit, I think.
Yeah, and Patrick had the opportunity to land Jace Architect with a lot here, but I think he's correctly identifying that he needs to be very careful about the High Priest, because Kyle can synergize with Doom Travelers and sack outlets. It's probably better to err on the side of caution a little bit against that threat card. Make sure that those don't get out of control, because the rest of Kyle's threats in this matchup are fairly easy to handle on a one-on-one basis.
I agree with you. I mean, if he can go 1-for-1 all day. It's the big question is, again, when Immortal Servitude comes to town and brings back all of those 2s, then how does Chapin handle things? Because again, one of the things that he mentioned is that mass removal is something that's difficult for Grixis to come by. That was the thing that he didn't really think he could find, is another burn is going to take care of Cartel Aristocrat. Maybe misordered those creatures, the Cartel Aristocrat and Blood Artist that turn.
Yeah.
Did Blankenship.
So I assume we're going to be landing Jace here.
Yeah, now's a pretty good time. And we're going to mill because, hey, Blood Artist can't take that down. So he's going to reveal the Divination that you did speak of, Dissipate, and a Pillar of Flame. Divination probably going to get a second look there from Blankenship.
I would imagine that the card we care about most here, actually, from Blankenship is the Dissipate, because if our plan is Immortal Servitude, then the counter spells really matter.
Yeah. And you see, he does have Immortal Servitude in his hand to go along with another Blood Artist and a Tragic Slip. So, you know, one of the things that's fun with the Jace Architect of Thought is when those cards are being laid out there, you know, if you split them immediately, you're kind of giving away information. So how long are you supposed to wait? What's your reaction supposed to be? You know, he's separating 2 and 1 right now. So if you're Pat, what are your thoughts about that happening? You know, does he actually care about Dissipate, or is he just trying to kind of reel me in a little bit?
Sure. But I do very much like that split from Kyle.
As do I. So Sulfur Falls is going to allow Chapin to Pillar of Flame Blood Artist, and Chapin is just taking out everything. Maybe wishing he had a Pillar of Flame now for that Voice of Resurgence that Blankenship has just drawn.
Yeah. So I assume we're going to see Blood Artist and Voice of Resurgence added to the board this turn from Kyle.
Yep, and those two are going to join the party. You see Chapin's hand right now. He has a Cavern of Souls. He also has a Far and Away in his hand, but most importantly, he has a Jake Architect of Thought, which I'm sure you know from your Pro Tour testing. This was
the best card in block.
Yeah, this was arguably the best card in block constructed. Warped how everyone had to build their deck.
Yep.
So let's see how Pat wants to start his turn.
Yeah, I think he's debating between what he wants to do with Jace or if he wants to lead with Divination.
How do you lead here?
I probably I would Jace first because he has some really big plays he can find, whether it's Ralzeric or is it Staticaster, what have you. I think that it informs more of his decision making than the Divination does. And he has all of his mana available in case he draws something big.
Chapin going to play a Cavern of Souls naming Human, and it looks like he is, well, so 5 mana.
This is going to be a fused. Oh, we're flashing back the Devil's Play.
Yep. So Devil's Play is going to take care of that, and Jace is going to tick up for the Cumberstone effect. So -1/-0 on the attacks.
Sure. Okay, that play also makes quite a bit of sense.
Yeah.
I forgot about the Devil's Play lingering in the graveyard.
Ah, most do. Most do. I don't see that one anymore.
But now this is an insane window if Kyle can draw a black source of mana, because he can stick the Immortal Servitude, get back a bunch of creatures. It allows the Elemental to just flat take out Jace.
2, 3, 4, and 5. And how can you not? Immortal Servitude for 2. 1, 2,
Pretty
3,
impressive.
and 4.
Not a card that's seen a lot of constructed play so far, but it was really good there.
Yeah, so Pat goes through all this work of trying to 1-for-1 Blankenship into the ground. Blankenship plays Immortal Servitude for 2. You see it on the screen there for you. Return each creature card with converted mana cost X from the graveyard to the battlefield. X was 2, and now Jace is going to go bye-bye. And now Chapin has got some work to do.
Oh, yeah.
And isn't it ironic that Dissipate is the draw for the turn for Pat?
Yeah. All that hard work undone.
With one single card. Not to mention, you know, all those creatures are back, but the elemental token there that's tapped and sideways, yeah, that thing is huge right now. Absolutely huge. So now Divination here from Chapin. Going to find himself 2 new cards, 2 lands, or what he found in Dragon Skull Summon and Nephalia Drown Yard. And again, right now, the other big thing here too, Patrick, is that he has to cast level spells on his turn, because if he doesn't, Voice of Resurgence text actually becomes relevant.
Yeah, no.
You don't want that to happen.
Again, this Grizzlies deck, not much in the way of sweepers.
Yep.
Sack to Cartel Aristocrat, I assume to get a Blood Artist trigger in response to this far.
So you see a little drain, a little gain. And Chapin just going to pass the turn back. So he is in some serious trouble here, as Blankenship is going to draw a card for his turn. Doesn't really need to add very much to his board, but wants to make sure everything is correct, and he does. Can actually threaten, you know, Skirtek High Priestess turn if he wants.
Yeah, Immortal Servitude is so unbelievably hateful towards Patrick's deck.
Yeah, yeah, it's crazy, actually. It's another Cartel Aristocrat going to get added to the table here from Blankenship. It's going to drastically change, I think, that way that one, Chapin sideboards for the next game, but two, how he plays the next game. Because I think he's going to be, you know, we saw a lot of 1-for-1 trades. I think he's going to be pretty conservative the next game, and potentially the next 2 games if he does win the second one, about how he wants to go about his plans, because I feel like he's going to bluff and or leave up Dissipate or some other counter magic a lot moving forward.
So Patrick has just drawn Olivia Valderin, traditionally pretty solid against Junk Aristocrats, but he may be a little bit too far behind on the board at this point for that to matter enough. We'll see.
There's your 4 mana.
It's going to put a lot of pressure on Kyle to navigate the situation correctly. There's definitely a lot of room for Kyle to make a mistake. That's for sure.
So Voice of Resurgence is going to get sacrificed here to Cartel Aristocrat. Elemental token going to be coming in so long as Blankenship does remember the trigger. And does also remember his Blood Artist trigger. Actually, a lot of triggers going on for him here. So if he is very adept at playing his deck, you know, he can get a lot of advantage. And so now a 5/5 demon going to come into play from the High Priest as well. And maybe a little bit of an error there because it looks like he could have made 2 demons this turn, potentially.
If he didn't attack with Cartel Aristocrat, he would have been able to, correct?
So what?
Oh yeah, because the demon comes into play, and then he has a 3rd creature.
Yeah. That's something he could have potentially done. So it may have been a slight misstep. Of course, Chapin could just break that up with exactly what he did here, which is activate Olivia to shoot down Blood Artist. But if he uses Blood Artist, the point is relatively moot now because the Tragic Slip with Morbid is going to take down the Olivia Voldaren. But he could have had another 5/5 demon token if he does order things correctly. At the end of the day, not a big deal because Patrick Chapin is scooping up his permanent. So Kyle Blankenship is going to win game number 1.
A devastating Immortal Servitude.
Yes.
A card that really has not gotten that much, really not much view. I've seen it as one-ofs and sideboards on occasion in similar decks, but playing that many copies main clearly has paid off for Kyle so far and was just incredible in that game.
I mean, you have to imagine if we were to bring Kyle Blankenship into the booth right now, from the middle of this game where he's sideboarding, and ask how many times have you taken people by surprise with Mortal Servitude today, I think the answer would be, 5 or 6. No one saw coming.
What's more interesting is, if you asked Patrick, what do you think the odds are that you're winning this game the turn before he was Immortal Servitude when he had Jace in play, Divination in hand? He probably would have said, I don't know, 90+%. Would have been a reasonable guess there.
Yeah.
Instead, he was handily defeated.
So we're going to go over sideboards here for you guys. In between game number 1 and 2, we're going to take a look at Patrick Chapin's first as he is going to be on the play for game 2.
So here's another copy of his Staticaster, which is traditionally excellent against Junk Aristocrats. He has a Rolling Templar, which is awesome here. He has access to more counter spells if he wants them. He has an additional 2 copies of Dissipate, and I believe 2 copies of Negate. I'm not sure, the counter spells are a little bit dodgy. Negate is particularly narrow, but if he feels he has a huge edge outside of getting punked out by Immortal Servitude, he may want to pursue putting a couple more counter spells in the deck. He has, and also an additional Psychic Spiral that he may want. He has 2 copies of Cremate. I'm sure that's way more geared towards Burial Rites style decks, but with your opponent on Immortal Servitude, it is possible to want to bring those in.
Yeah, I mean, definitely some options. I think, I think normally in this matchup, which is really interesting, Chapin would not bring in Dissipate or Negate. That's not a thing that would normally happen. But now I think he's reaching for those cards again, basically saying, the only way I can lose to you is Immortal Servitude. At least I think that's the only way I can lose. And so, desperate times, desperate measures. You take a look at Blankenship's deck list, his spells, yet again, 3 Grisly Salvage, 3 Lingering Souls, 3 Tragic Slip, and 3 Immortal Servitude. Those are spells that you do not bring Negate in for.
Right.
But if you can't beat Immortal Servitude, or you're that scared of it resolving, then I think you do bring a Negate.
Yeah, and it's questionable how much 1-for-1 spot removal Patrick wants to have in this matchup anyway, because he's so good at playing to the board, and those threats are actually quite effective against Kyle. Olivia, Ralzeric, Aetherling, all these are solid threats. And now, once you know that Immortal Servitude is the thing, the plan of just 1-for-1, 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 and slowly pull ahead with Divinations and Jaces, that might not get it done here. So you may not, you may need to just have a generally more proactive plan than sitting back on a bunch of 1-for-1 spot removal, which I'm sure Patrick thought was a totally reasonable plan in the first game, and it looked, if you're looking overhead and you don't know about Immortal Servitude, it looked like he had total control of that game.
Yeah.
But now, knowing that Servitude is a thing, you may have to reevaluate the way you're pursuing the matchup.
We take a look at Blankenship's sideboard here very quickly. 1 Garrett Relentless, 2 Ray Revelation, 2 Duress, 3 Unflinching Courage, 3 Deathrite Shaman, 3 Abrupt Decay, and 1 Devour Flesh. This is going to be not much of a surprise when I say that he does not have cards that are geared towards beating the Grixis control deck.
Yeah, I'm not really sure what those cards would even be,
yeah,
really.
Me
the
either.
4th Immortal Servitude, I guess,
yeah.
would be the card.
I mean, 2 Duresses are certainly interesting in a deck that has a ton of spells and very few creatures. But again, there are going to be times where you Duress Chapin, and you're going to be staring at a hand of maybe Aetherling, and I mean, potentially, is it Static Caster, Livy Voldaren, Snapcaster Mage, where Duress is not going to be that great, or you just Duress him and his hand is just a bunch of removal spells, and it doesn't matter what card you take, because all of the cards overlap so much that if you take a turn burn, you're staring at Mizzium Mortars right in the face. What's it matter you took that?
Yeah, Duress is a little bit weird. Intuitively, you would think, oh, he's a 3-color control deck with a bunch of spells. Duress is probably quite good, but the spells are so redundant, and the most powerful cards in the matchup, from Kyle's position, are probably actually the creatures. Particularly, is it Static Caster, that Duress might actually be kind of mopey. Where on the surface, it seems like, yeah, of course, I would want Duress against a deck like this.
Yeah. Again, if you guys are just joining us, Cedric Phillips, Patrick Sullivan here in the booth. StarCityGames.com is bringing you guys Grand Prix Miami. If you do want to join us on Twitter, feel free. Let us know what you guys think about Patrick Chapin's innovative Grixis deck that he wrote about on Star City Games on Friday at SCG Live, #GP Miami. We do appreciate all 7,000 of you guys that are watching so far today. It's been a lot of fun bringing it to you.
And especially now we've got, 2 pretty different takes on Standard on camera. The metagame we've discussed at length as being diverse, a lot of different decks, all of them reasonable. And here we are with 2 decks. The Junk Aristocrats deck kind of being conventional, but this is a much different take on it. Way more graveyard oriented than the list we've seen proposed by Brad Nelson and Ty Anderson, etc. And here's Patrick Chapin playing Grixis in a format where, with the exception of really Gerard Fabiano, there haven't been a lot of loud proponents for the deck. And Chapin's take on the deck, much different than the one that Gerard has been advocating. Agreed?
So we'll take a look at the openers here. You see that Blankenship does have at least 2 lands in the form of Temple Gardens. You see Chapin taking a look at his as well. See a Blood Crypt on the edge. The rest are a little bit hidden here, but we'll see if either player wants to keep their starting 7, because one thing that Blankenship does not have is black mana. But he is going to keep, Chapin is going to play a Blood Crypt, and game number 2 is underway.
As we see Vault of the Archangel at the top for Kyle.
Just a 1 of in his 23 lands, but not the most timely time for it.
Yes. And we'll start off the action with a Doom Traveler from Kyle.
Chapin does have blue mana in the form of Sulphur Falls, so pretty happy to begin.
Looks like he has Divination, a lot of spot removal, a Static Caster in hand, looks like a really solid hand for Chapin.
And he's just going to pass the turn back. So, Blood Artist is the draw here for Blankenship, but again, no black mana. You see a Grizzly Salvage in his hand. Temple Garden going to come into play untapped. You might see a Strangleroot Geist head on into the red zone here, and that's exactly what we are going to see here from Blankenship. So he wants to get the beatdown started early, but as you'd mentioned, his Static Caster is looking great right now.
Yep.
Chapin draws a Cremate.
So he has gone with a little bit of anti-graveyard action.
Static Caster in the main phase and passes the turn back. Now this plays a little bit curious to me, that if you're going to play it in the main phase and not shoot, then is there a reason to play it in the main phase at all?
I'm trying to think of one, and I cannot. You could respond to Voice of Resurgence, so it's not that.
And I think if you want to play in the main phase and shoot something down, it's because you want to dodge Tragic Slip.
Yep.
So the Morbid's not on for your 0/3 creature, but we don't see either of those. So Chapin just playing is a Static Caster right away. You guys do see it on the screen. It does have Flash, and it is an 0/3, so it can certainly block right now as well. But I'm curious to see Chapin's reasoning for casting it right away.
Kyle mulling over. He did draw black mana this turn, so a lot of his hand has been now capable of being unleashed.
And you know, in the back of Chapin's mind, this entire game, there's a Skirsack High Priest, and the entire game he's going to be thinking about, okay, don't get ruined by Immortal Servitude. Here's a block on the Strangleroot Geist, and going to shoot down Doom Traveler's first half. Spirit Token will be coming shortly. Static Caster conveniently an 0/3.
Yep. It's a good deal.
So Chapin draws a Water Grave. That's going to come into play. He's going to go down to 15. Let's see if he has any maybe 4-mana Planewalker action. You see a Rolling Tembler in his hand right now, so that can clean up pretty well. Can't take down the Spirit because it does fly, but he can shoot the Strangleroot Geist, let it undie and come back, and then fire away there. But again, if he does that, he ends up putting his shields down and opening himself up, not just yet to a big Immortal Servitude, but It is a little bit scary. We're going to see the cremate play. Okay.
Now, Chapin can now pass with Dissipate mana at the ready, too.
Yeah, feel a lot more comfortable that way.
Yeah.
Now, we were wondering if he was going to bring in cremate. As you said, that's a card that's mostly for Unburial Rites decks. Very good against Strangleroot guys in the Undying part of that, especially when you have Static Cast in your deck. Do you like bringing that in, or is it maybe a little too niche?
I think it's fine because it cycles, and he might just want to be moving away from having a ton of spot removal in the deck.
Okay.
Like I said, I believe Chapin's best play in the matchup is to play a little bit more to the board, not sit so much on his heels, because the creatures are very powerful against Kyle, and the threat of Immortal Servitude means that he can't simply kill everything Kyle produces. So I like just streamlining the deck a little bit.
So Voice of Resurgence is going to start things, and Dissipate is going to end things as far as our Elemental Deer is concerned. Vault of the Archangel will be Blankenship's land drop for the turn, and he can play that Blood Artist, but how good is that right now? Not very.
Into the maw of the active Static Caster, he might have to sit on his hands for a little while here before going down that road.
When we take a look through Blankenship's deck list again, he does have three Tragic Slips in his main deck. He also has 3 copies of Abrupt Decay in his sideboard. He did not see Static Caster Game 1, and I think it's safe to assume that Abrupt Decay did not come in, but I think we might see it come in the next game if there is a next one.
Yep. And this is the game plan from Chapin's deck that I like much more of. Just be proactive. Static Caster, Olivia, that's where your power is coming from.
I like this approach a lot too. He's going to tap some mana on his main phase here. Yeah, so here's Olivia now, threatening to literally just take over the game just easily right now.
Somewhat surprised to not see him shoot down the token straight away, as it widens the range of ways Kyle could potentially turn on his High Priest.
Yeah, it also just turns on the Morbid for the Tragic Slip that Blankenship has just drawn as well. So I am with you now. Maybe Chapin's thought process is, he can turn on Tragic Slip at pretty much any point anyway. I'm going to shoot things down with Olivia. I'm going to be shooting things down with Static Caster. So it's almost a given that Tragic Slip is always going to read, with -13 instead of -1/-1. But I think you can do a lot to avoid that being a thing too.
Yes.
So. Yeah, and there's your Spirit Token coming on in.
Kyle's sort of staring at him like, you can kill it for free in several different ways. So
yeah.
Choose one of them. You want a Static Caster? That's cool. Block with Olivia? That's cool too.
Pat says, how about I take 1? Go down to 12. So we are, all right. So we are going to tap the black mana here.
I think this is going to be a Grizzly Salvage.
Yeah. So what are our 5 cards? Lingering Souls, Swamp, Doom Traveler, Overgrown Tomb, and Immortal Servitude.
So I imagine we're just taking the Swamp here, I would guess.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's Swamp or Overgrown Tomb, depending on if you feel you need more green mana for whatever reason. I don't feel like it's a Doom Traveler, and you can't take the others, so it is going to be Swamp. And Blankenship has not made his land drop for the turn.
Yep.
And the black does still allow him to have up Tragic Slip, and Chapin not shooting. So now it's very clear that Pat is playing around Tragic Slip.
Yep. Just happy to take his point of damage. I think that attack was a pretty loud indicator that Tragic Slip was at the ready. Mm-hmm. And Patrick now totally happy to untap. He can kind of break up the High Priest at any point now that he has Olivia online, and so he can afford to take a random point, have Kyle be a little inefficient with his mana.
And the crazy thing is he can even start to get a little bit creative here by shooting the High Priest with Olivia and then taking it the following turn. He can actually do some things that didn't really even think were possible if he'd like to, as Chapin does play a Cavern of Souls and name Human with it.
Yep. So Kyle's hand, a variety of one-toughness creatures and a Tragic Slip. Facing down is a Static Caster and Olivia. Very tight spot, very tough spot. So this is significant because it's the second creature in play that Kyle needs to potentially turn on High Priest, so this might induce a response from Chapin.
And anytime that your opponent is playing Blood Artist into it and is a Static Caster and an Olivia Valderin, you have to be thinking, all right, almost certainly has Tragic Slip or some sort of trick that I have to care about.
Yep. Chapin just happy with it responding, allows a 4th creature to hit play. I think we're going to start seeing some fireworks at the end of Kyle's turn here.
Yep. It looks like we might see, okay, so we're going to see a shot here. A little bit bigger.
Chapin wants to start by killing the High Priestess. That's the... All the other creatures in play are effectively irrelevant. The High Priest is the only one that's threatening to advance Kyle's board in any appreciable way.
Yeah.
So, if we're going to have a fight, it's going to start here. And then after that, if the coast is pretty much clear for Chapin to kind of do whatever he wants.
Yeah. So you see the die that is on. You see the die that is on the High Priest, just signifying that it's a vampire. It's not a +1/+1 counter. Now Chapin is going to shoot his own is a Static Caster, and keep untapping, making Olivia a 5/5.
Still not compelled to act because
wow.
Kyle does not have an outlet to generate Morbid, so he can still kind of hang back and just build up something awesome here.
Yeah, and a huge draw there from Chapin. Chapin drawing a Dissipate for the turn. So, you know, he's done a pretty nice job of controlling Tragic Slip. I wouldn't say he's, you can even say he's playing around it, but he's controlling it and what it's going to do. And now he's drawing a Dissipate to be able to actually counter it from it being good.
Yeah, no, Chapin has been incredibly disciplined with the way that he's proceeded with this game. A lot of players would have just potentially opened up to a Tragic Slip, possibly gotten blown out by the High Priest, and as long as Kyle doesn't produce a sacrifice outlet, Chapin is totally happy to play the game at this pace. And now you see rolling Templar, which is a disaster for Kyle.
Yeah, Chapin here is announcing that I'm not scared of a Tragic Slip. A, I know you have Tragic Slip. B, you can only cast one this turn. And C, I'm not scared of it anymore.
Just a brilliant bit of sequencing over these last couple turns by Chapin.
Yeah.
Never exposing himself to any risk, and now just blowing up Kyle's board.
So you're going to see 3 creatures die again. Rolling Tumbler does not take out any creatures with flying, so Spirit's going to stay. Chapin's own is a Static Caster, does have 2 damage on it, but after the dust settles, you're going to see 3 Blood Artist triggers, a little drain, a little gain, and a Spirit token coming from the Doom Traveler. And now Chapin can shoot down both of these Spirits and get the board where he likes it, which is clear.
Yep. And even if this results in a Tragic Slip on Olivia, he's so far ahead on cards. He still has Dissipate up and ready to probably draw out that Dissipate. Yep.
Yeah. Now this was the thing I was going to ask you before it happened. Is okay? Is Pat going to Dissipate the Tragic Slip, or is he going to let Olivia die and hold the Dissipate for maybe an Immortal Servitude?
Well, I think at this point he's threatening so much damage here. Olivia is such a dominating presence on the board. Kyle can't. Like the Immortal Servitude, he can still just shoot down all the Blood Artists. Olivia clears kind of everything else, and so even that card's not terribly threatening right now. It still matters. It's still by far Kyle's best draw, but I think that Chapin has it pretty well covered.
I agree. So Lingering Souls will be flashed back. 2 Spirit tokens are going to come in here. So there are those. And this again is signifying, if you're Chapin, this is screaming, all right, he either has a Tragic Slip or he's attempting to bluff a Tragic Slip.
Yep.
Far and away the draw for Chapin this turn to go along with his Divination in hand. All right, fire away. Here we go. And yeah, I figure this may be the case as well. Going to save it with Far, going to bounce his own Olivia, which means he's made it through 2 of the 3 Tragic Slips thus far, and going to recast his Olivia. Is he? 3 and 4. All right. Thought he may cast Divination. But
Yeah, better to try to close this game out quickly, I would feel like.
the Blankenship has drawn a Godless Shrine for the turn to go along with a Ray of Revelation in his hand. A card I'm a little bit surprised to see him bring in. I guess the question you have to ask yourself is, why would he bring that in? The first card that really jumps to mind is Curse of Deathhold from Chapin's deck, which is a card that Pat is known to play in Grixis strategies, as you see him resolve a Divination, but hasn't seen one yet, and from looking at his deck list, isn't even there.
Yeah. You see him turn over the Ray on his way out. Chapin with Raw Zarek left over in his hand, but no reason to commit it to the board. Didn't speed up his clock, and so going on to a third game.
So Chapin's going to win game number 2 over Blankenship. Grixis Control is going to even it up with Junk Aristocrats. As these players do take a look at their sideboards and reshuffle, you see Blankenship's probably going to go back to the well and put that array back into his sideboard. He hasn't seen a reason to have it in yet. Do want to update records for you guys of people that we are following over the course of this tournament. I know there are a lot of names in attendance that you guys do care about at home. Todd Anderson sitting at 4-2. Playing Junk Aristocrats. We've got Patrick Chapin on camera for you guys, sitting at 6-0 with Grixis Control. Matthew Costa, 6-0 with Blue, White, Red Flash. He's got some Thundermaw Hellkites in his main deck this weekend, but if you've ever seen Costa play or ever one of his feature matches, tapping mana on his own turn, not really his thing.
Not a big fan.
No. Reed Duke sitting at 6-0, playing Jund, the deck that he's had a lot of success with, over the past couple months. Willie Edel made the trip over here from Brazil, 5-1 with Domri Naya. We also look at William Jensen, who we had on camera last round, defeated Harry Corvasi, to move on to 6-0. He's playing the Jund aggro deck that Brian Kibler had designed. Kibler sitting at 4-2 right now with the same deck. I talked to Brian after last round. He simply said, I'm not playing very well today. Yeah.
Yes.
Just upfront and honest. You know Brian quite well. Doesn't beat around the bush. He just said, I'm not playing well today.
If he feels like he's gotten unlucky, he'll let you know, and if he feels like he's messed up, he'll also let you know.
The third person of the trio playing the Jund aggro deck, Owen Turtenwald, former player of the year. He is sitting at 6-0. You take a look at Joel Larson. He is sitting at 4-2, playing the green-white deck of Shuhei Nakamura's design. Stephen Mann sitting at 6-0. I know you covered him last round with Junk Reanimator.
Yeah.
Brad Nelson sitting at 6-0 with Junk Aristocrats. David Sharfman 5-1 with Jund Midrange. Shahar Shenhar 5-1 with Bant Hexproof. Ben Stark 4-2 with Bant Hexproof. We see Josh Narlayton 5-1. Go Dennis Vigoris. Both of those players playing Bant Hexproof, both at 5-1. And then Craig Wesco sitting at 4-2 with his white weenie deck splashing red.
What's the red splash in his deck for?
I know he has Searing Spear. I think also Boros Charm kind of hiding out there as well. So just some updates for the names in the crowd. We'll be doing that for you guys all weekend long. If we can't have them on camera, you guys want to know how they're doing before those standings are uploaded. So we want to give them to you and let you know.
Kyle going to start things off, I believe, with a Doom Traveler here.
And there it is. Both players kept 7 pretty quick.
Yeah.
It looks like both players are pretty happy with their hand.
Well, Kyle's hand is 3 lands, all of his colors of mana, Voice, Lingering Souls, and Doom Traveler. So just a very solid 7-card hand.
And now Varal's as well. As there's your Voice Researches, there's Doom Traveler getting into the red zone. So Chapin going to go down to 19, and he's going to, I think this is going to be a pretty tough game for him.
Well, if he has Pillar, then he's in pretty good shape. If he does not, then this is pretty rough. So he's being put to the test right away. And it looks like no Pillar.
Just to tap Watergrave and passing the turn back? Ugh. See Cartel Aristocrat over there for Blankenship as well.
Yeah. Kyle's got to still be very cautious about developing his board in the face of a potential instant static caster.
Yep. It's kind of funny, you look at Blankenship's board as he adds Varals to it. You know, Rolling Templar played a huge role in the last game. Rolling Templar couldn't look worse this one.
Yep.
That's for sure.
Chapin feels like he's leaning very hard on Pillar of Flame in, against some of the draws that Kyle can produce. And here we are.
Blood Crypt, the draw here for Patrick. And how is he going to be able to turn this around? Because, you know, you look at the numbers on these creatures, 2/2, 2/2, and a 1/1. Not really a big deal, but it is a big deal if you can't actually efficiently get them off the board.
Yeah.
And it's looking like it's going to be very difficult. As you mentioned, he is relying very, very heavily on Pillar of Flame to be able to kind of get himself out of this exact situation.
Yeah, I think that the recipe that Chapin has is to try to play Olivia at the highest life total possible. I think that's his best path. He has an Olivia in hand.
That really demonstrates that point too, that you mentioned. If you're going to use your turn, or at least your mana, to bounce a Varals on your turn, obviously you can't do it. You don't want to. I'm not gonna say you can't, but you don't want to on your opponent's turn because of Voice of Resurgence. But to have your turn be bounce your Varals pass is it's pretty telling.
Yes.
As here's a Cremate to remove his own far and away, to generate a little bit of velocity and pass the turn back. So yeah, he is really struggling right now.
Right, and he's doing that obviously on his turn to avoid a Voice of Resurgence trigger.
Blood Artist, the draw here from Blankenship.
So these threats that the Junk Aristocrats deck plays are obviously all very durable against random control cards. Spot removal is not very effective here, and Kyle's putting that on display so far.
Now, this is a bit of an interesting play where he's going to just choose to play Blood Artist this turn instead of adding to his board with Varls like he did last turn. I mean, in a way, he's not adding to his clock, and in a way, he is adding to his clock because of what Blood Artist does, and it seems like he wants to get that established, but, you know, that line is questionable. What has changed from the previous turn to make it so he doesn't just want to play Varls again and pass?
Yeah, I can't honestly say. Maybe he's feeling like that last turn signifies that Chapin is going to have to just start playing spot removal spells. But this line of play is both shortens his clock if Chapin is doing something else and exposes him much more to Jace Architect a thought that I would have definitely just tried to land. I would have just replayed Barrels last turn, I believe.
It also opens him up to Pillar of Flame too on Voice of Resurgence. Had Chapin drawn one that turn, where Varls was actually making that play pretty obsolete. You see Blankenship draws an Abrupt Decay, a card that we thought he might board in because of how dominant his Static Caster was the previous game.
Yeah.
Right now, not looking very good, so kind of a dead draw for him where he was looking more for a land that turn, I think.
Yep. And we're going to see an attack here from Kyle. A pretty loud declaration of Tragic Slip. We'll see how Chapin wants to block. Just going to take it again. Chapin being very disciplined. Oh, never mind. I'm sorry. He did block.
Yeah, I thought he took it as well.
I thought he was motioning that he was taking.
Yeah. But he is going to block. Elemental Token's going to come in. You're going to see a Blood Artist trigger occur. So a little drain, a little gain. And now, is it going to be Tragic Slip on the Olivia? Because Blankenship is so bottlenecked on mana because it only has one black source. Now the Blood Artist trigger here from the Morbid Tragic Slip. Did he want to take care of Olivia or not? He chooses to. He can't add to his board at all and has to just pass the turn back.
Yep. And Kyle, really feeling the pressure of not having a second black mana there to continue to develop his board. And I feel like we're getting to a spot where Chapin's going to be able to start taking over the game with his spot removal spells and his additional copy of Olivia that he has in hand.
He is turning things around in a hurry here, that's for sure. Now, if you just want to keep count at home, you can account that Blood Artist has dealt 2 damage, is acted as a 2/2 right now. So, you know, the play of that versus playing a Varls in the last turn, you can actually account for that damage if you'd like to.
Yeah, and now it's also cascading into this turn.
Yeah.
And he also has a Voice of Resurgence that would be a play that he would have Voice of Resurgence in the graveyard, which is a play that he could do something with Varls in play that wouldn't tax his black mana. So he did play a black spell and scavenge his voice onto something as well.
Yep.
There's a lot of cascading implications.
There's a Far and Away that is fused in response to a duress. Takes a look at the hand, you see Barter in Blood and Olivia Voldaren. So bye-bye Barter to go along with a Blood Crypt and a Drown Yard. Far and Away bouncing the Elemental Token from Voice of Resurgence, sacrificing the Doom Traveler, getting a Spirit Token, a little bit of draining gains from the Blood Artist, but again, because Blankenship is so bottlenecked on black mana, duress is his turn and has to pass the turn back.
Yeah.
Chapin draws Cavern Souls, and now Olivia is threatening to take over, and it puts Blankenship in the spot where he has to draw Tragic Slip.
Chapin's gonna use Olivia on the main phase again to avoid Tragic Slip being a thing.
Which I love it this time.
Yeah.
You know, I don't think he's in a position to bob and weave around it like he did the previous game. But now Blankenship draws a 4th land, but most importantly, a 2nd black source. So let's see how this turns things around, because he's getting close to being able to cast 2 spells in a turn, and I think he needs to be able to turn that corner to get back in this game, but I'm not sure if it's going to matter because Olivia is here, and it is looking to just take over the game as it often does.
It is really challenging for a deck of all little creatures to be slogging through an Olivia. Chapin is fairly low, so there are Blood Artist implications of additional Blood Artists and what have you that Chapin can still kind of get punked out of this game, but he is starting to really exert control over the board.
All right, there is the Varls that we saw from many turns ago. In for 1 we go, and so now bluffing a Tragic Slip.
I really like this attack from Kyle.
I love this attack. Chapin calls, immediately blocks, and passes the turn. Chapin can see right through that. Draws a card, draws a Dreadbore.
I imagine we're going to shoot down Barrels as our first order of business here.
Yeah, no reason to use a Dreadbore on it, right?
Yeah. Leave something in the holster in case you know, mortal servitude or something like that occurs.
That's a hell of a block there by Chapin.
Yep. I like the attack. I gotta say, it costs very little. I mean, that token's gonna die anyway.
Yeah.
And that might have actually been the reason that Chapin decided to block anyway, because the attack is a free roll from Kyle's perspective. The odds that he's bluffing is very high.
Yeah. Especially because at any point he can just control the tragic slip by just sacking the token to Verls and then tragic slipping it. So Chapin be able to read through that right away and realizing you can control tragic slip whenever you want to anyway. So why would I not just block here? Because if you have tragic slip, my thing is going to die.
Yep. I really like watching Chapin take over the control of the game this way, because he was one of basically the first very loud advocate for Olivia Voldaren as a finisher in control decks, basically upon the set's release. And now seeing it do what he claimed it could do, very nice to watch.
Cavern of Souls here from Chapin. We'll find out what that's naming, as Blankenship does draw another land for the turn. It is an overgrown tomb that he's going to put into play tapped, as we do find out that the Cavern for Chapin is naming human, and he just passes the turn back. So Pat going to draw a card. He draws a Dragon Skull Summit. Olivia going to come across here for 5. And as Olivia is known to do,
dominating against creature decks.
Yeah, Mortal Servitude, the draw here. The graveyard costs look a little bit varied right now. That is for 2. You see Chapin's going to take a look. Doesn't have a counter spell.
I think we're only looking at getting back a Blood Artist and a Voice of Resurgence.
And that looks to be what it is. So Blood Artist is going to shoot that down. No nonsense here from Chapin. Going to grow that Olivia even a little bit larger. Going to untap. He's going to draw a card. It's a Steam Vent's going to come across for lethal. Patrick Chapin does win this match 2-1 over Kyle Blankenship in his innovative take on Junk Aristocrats. Grist's Control, at the very least, Mr. Sullivan, will be playing tomorrow.